I think that's the point which Rami had been talking about. But Rami, there is one thing which is very, very missing, and that is the inability of the person sitting in Manipur to bring people together. That's the Chief Ministerial task. And secondly, there is absence of peace committee. Suddenly it was announced. It looks like as it has been junked. We can talk about the administrative and the military issues and the great game, Myanmar, narco terrorism. There are a lot of things to be spoken about. But there is also one thing. If you look at it, after that Myra Paib's demonstration which took place and this letter of resignation was torn, he has spoken to the press. Certain good things have happened, like the schools have opened today. I'll show you those good visuals, Rami. I showed those visuals before you joined. Children laughing, talking to the press. But then peace committee is absent.
Kartikeya, there are so many CSOs in a state like Manipur. There are so many civil society organizations. Unfortunately, more so they have vested interests than not. And that is problematic. That is why from the beginning of this situation, when we've been discussing, we've been saying the importance of civil society organizations is immense because they wield a lot of power and they have a lot of influence on communities. Having said that, I have seen it myself, and I'm sure Kartikeya, you'll agree with me that we've seen groups from either or of the communities who in private are unwilling to cede space, let alone in a dialogue. So the question of a peace committee, as I think as important as it is and as supportive I am of it, I think will have to come from a point of view where locals come together and say, look, we want to put this committee together. We want to put a group together that includes Kukis, that includes Meiteis, that includes Nagas, even if they are there as mediators and negotiators between the two communities. But we put this together as a non-political a civil society organization that doesn't have any vested interest except, the only interest being the priority and the safety of the state. This unfortunately is not happening. I think, like you rightly said, it seems to be the whole idea seems to have been junk, which I think is really not a great move to make. This is one of the most important components of bringing peace back to the state. And it is equally important to realize that existing CSOs have some amount of loyalty to this side or to that side. That, these CSOs may have vested interests as well. So maybe, we have to stop our expectations from any sort
So
of
how
peace
do we
committee.
transcend civil society organization? How do we transcend them?
No, I'm saying that the present CSOs, I have always maintained that the importance of civil society is going to be very, very important in coming to some sort of agreement between the communities. But the present CSOs, Kartikeya, I don't have huge amount of faith in them because everybody is leaning one political side or another, or one community or another, and it seems like their leadership has vested interests. And like some of my panelists earlier mentioned, that there's been a lot of antagonism between these civil society organizations as well, which shouldn't happen because eventually one is trying to come to some agreement. So wherein I feel that civil society has to come up instead of the civil society organizations that still exist. I think, there are very bright people in Manipur. There are educated people in Manipur. There are people in Manipur who are highly respected from the defense forces, from the educational systems. I think these are the people that need to come together and say, look, we discard all these other narratives for the time being, all these other civil society organizations, and we form a group of our own, which includes Kukis, Meiteis, Nagas, whoever it may be, retired judges, lawyers, educationists.
But
There
Rami,
is
do
this
you
kind
get this bad feeling that someone is expecting the state to limp back to normalcy, like any other law and order state, without any structural issues being addressed? कि हो जाएगा धीरे धीरे हो जाएगा.
the thing is, Kartikeya, I don't think the importance of the state is lost on anybody, or the great defining point of this conflict is lost on anybody. Like I've said, the fault lines are going to be there to for a very long time to come, and that is going to impact everything, whether it's the economy, whether it's the social fiber, whether it's the ethnic fabric of the community, whether it's security, not just internal security, but also national security. This sort of divide is going to impact everybody. So I don't think it's lost on anybody. One of the reasons I also think with this dilly-dallying, taking steps, from the state government or the central government also is because of the kind of repercussions any step that you take can have. We have to remember that there are 45,000 troops on the ground, if not more, at this point. We have to remember that we have seen some amount of tapering of violence. However, I think the moot point here is that it will have to limp back to normalcy. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a long time. But where it can start is, if these CSOs aren't working, considering there are so many CSOs, another one will have to be built. It will have to come from within the society, within the elders, within the influencers, within the well-respected people of society. And there are many, many rational voices, many logical voices. Of course, we've seen people who, on a personal level, have not wanted to cede any space, have said that they will not agree with anything apart from the exact demands that they have placed to the government. But they will also have to come to terms with the fact that that's not going to happen. But over and above that, like I'm saying, we will just have to people will just have to have the gall to put together a completely different new system of some sort of a dialogue, because really what is happening on ground right now is not working. These CSOs are not being able to bring anybody together because they have leanings, they have political motives, because they have loyalties, and that is not going to take us anywhere. So maybe a new system, maybe other local leaders
Ravi,
taking
can I
the
ask
lead.
you something?
Yeah.
If I have to ask you, how how is one supposed to recreate a committee? How would you go about doing it?
We've had many dialogues and we've had many conversations, not just with Kukis, but with also Meiteis and also Nagas. And there are definitely many, many logical, rational voices that realize the limitations of their demands, that realize the impact of their demands on the state. These people would possibly would really greatly help the state by coming together and forming a peace committee, a representation to the government of India in terms of what they're willing to do, how they choose to move forward, what are the discussions that they've had. These are very simplistic solutions. You can start very much at this level, because whatever we have right now is not working. So I know, people will say, oh, we should just have the president's rule, or we should just have this, or we should just have that. These are sort of I wouldn't call them knee-jerk reactions, but these are heavy-handed reactions that is not going to help solve the problem or bridge the gap between communities. If you remember, before this government came into power, just at that time, Biren Singh was considered a unifier. Today, he is considered a divider. So political influence only has limited impacts. Eventually you have to have solutions that come from within and agreements that come from within. If today the government of India takes a decision on what to do with scheduled tribe inclusion or what to do with autonomous district councils, really nobody is going to accept it unless the public wants to accept it, unless the communities want to accept it. In our dialogues that we've had, we've also had people come up and say, yeah, maybe the hill autonomous district councils need to be retrained in terms of maybe a midway solution can be that they are retrained or taught on the powers that are really vested in them, because they are really empowered and maybe they aren't using it to the full of their capability before we go to the next level solution. And this has come from within the communities. So if these kind of logical arguments come up from logical people who are willing to see the problems from a very in-depth point of view, then these people should come together and, make a more public statement. But that I don't see happening.
Okay.
Really, unfortunately, I don't see that happening. I do wish that it does happen, because I think any initiative taken from the government in terms of trying to find a solution for them is not going to stand long term.
Okay.
Only something that comes from within the communities will have some sort of merit.